So it really doesn't matter what you have the kid reading. If they like reading novels, great. Fiction, great. Romance for the older ones, maybe, great. They can be reading newspapers. They can be reading National Geographic Kids. They could be even working, if they're reading online, with something like Starfall, something that has real books that turn pages and help them to do the reading. Any of that, 20 minutes is enough, especially because when they're in your class, hopefully they're getting additional reading work and time in text. I will tell you that there was a study that came out in about 2008, so kind of a bit ago, but I would say it's relevant for today, a theorist, Nell Duke, who writes about vocabulary, went into classrooms across her district with her graduate students and had them pay attention to how much time kids spent in text. So how much time were they actually reading the book in front of them or working in the book in front of them over the course of the day? When the average came out for these, I think there was like 1,800 schools and, 15,000 classrooms, something like that. It was a very large piece. And when it came out, kids were inside of text doing it on their own approximately 10 minutes a day. That's it. And what I'll tell you is, if that's true in your own classroom, you need to give the impetus, you need to give that agency to the kid. You need to give them more time. The second thing is, we're working way too hard. We're not letting the kid do the work to learn to read. We're trying to train the kid on how to read. And the only way for kids to get better is to practice reading. So if you've got kids who are low, you might be pulling a group during that time, whether it's silent reading or whisper reading or just working on a journal or even working inside of the science or social studies textbook. You have to give kids time. And I'll tell you, the funny part about it is I know exactly how you're going to feel in the classroom, that there's not enough time. It's the one thing that districts will never give to you is more time. The kids come in at 7:30 or 8 and they leave your classroom at 3:30, like the end. And they're going to tell you, okay, you have to do this and this and this and intervention. And okay, well, if you do RTI, response to intervention, the kid, Travis, let's say, he needs an additional 30 minutes of instruction time. And you're like, where am I finding an additional 30 minutes of instruction time? The kids are only there a certain amount of time. So in order to do that additional instruction time, you're going to have to give the kids chances to read and write and work in text, because we know reading and writing are recursive. They develop at the same time. Not at the same rate, but at the same time. Little kids, 2 years old, already start doing scribbles that kind of look like cursive writing, or start to make pictures that they know that the picture that they're imagining has words that go with it that have meaning. So when a kid draws the little person that kids always draw, let me show you. Kids. Ooh, can I show you on here? I thought I had maybe not. Maybe it's on Zoom. Should do Zoom meetings. Okay, the picture where the kids have the little round head and then they have these real long legs that go down and these little arms out the side. Okay, it's totally developmental. Every kid does it. A big circle and the long legs, and sometimes they have little eyeballs and a little mouth, and they just have these little arms sticking out. But then when you ask them, hey, what is that? And they'll say, that's my dad and he loves pickles. You're like, I don't see a pickle on there. You should draw a pickle. And you write the words that the kid says. That's the start. The kid knows that picture symbolizes meaning. That's comprehension right there. He's understanding that, hey, my teacher didn't see a pickle. I better show a pickle. So if we want kids to become readers, we have to give them time to become readers. If parents are giving 20 minutes at home, you better make sure that kids are at least engaged with their own text, doing it on their own. At least 20 minutes in your own class. You've got them for 7 hours. Why would you not give them time to do that? And if you look at some of the National Reading Panel, our 5 pillars, those 5 pillars, one of those pieces, of course, is comprehension and vocabulary. In order for kids to have comprehension, they have to work in books. All of you probably remember one of the first books that you read, or the first chapter book that you read. For a lot of us, it's the chapter book, right? So it's like, and you don't remember the feeling of it, or at least I don't. I never remember the feeling of it. I just remember that when I was done, I was proud of myself because it was my first reading. And I read Laura Ingalls Wilder, like Little House on the Prairie, first chapter book. And I was so proud of the chapter book. I went in and I was like, Dad, look, I read this book. And he goes, great, there's 7 more in the series. And I was like, what? Because it was the first long book I'd ever read, right? And I thought, oh, I've done it. I'm done. I've read a book. And he's like, there's a lot of books in that series. Anyway, so I think that it's really important, and I think that you will find that a lot of research shows that if you're so tired at the end of the day, then you have not given the kids enough agency to do things. Now, if you're tired and happy at the end of the day, all's good. No problem. If you are disgusted or angst-ridden or anxious or hurting or sad, then chances are you haven't been teaching the lessons the way that you love. Now, you're going to have that when you give tests and that high-stakes stuff, and you're going to do that. But in the middle of all of that has to be this balance between who you are as a teacher and what you know that you do best, and what's required by TEA and what's required by the district. You have to be able to kind of balance those two. You can't let TEA and high-stakes tests and all of that outweigh who you are, because you will walk out feeling sad and depressed. And if you do, then you should reassess, like, what am I going to do tomorrow so that I love my job? It's the best job in the world. It really is. It's frustrating and hard and confusing and overwhelming, but it's also the coolest, best job you'll ever find. I say. That's why I miss it so much. So today, we're going to get to talk about some of my favorite stuff, which is comprehension and specifically vocabulary for comprehension, right, in older grades. So what do I do with those kiddos who are 4th, 5th, and above, right, as they move up? What do I do with them? And this includes if you have a 4th grader who's reading at an 8th grade level. And chances are you're going to get 1. And you're not going to know what to do with that 1 because everybody else gets to be in their guided reading groups. And then you've got this outlier who's way far on the bell curve. And you're like, this was so unfair. I need 3 of them, so at least I could have a group. But you'll have 1 that's reading above where everybody else is in the class. If they are, these are the kinds of lessons that you can do with them. So they're not grade specific, they're sort of developmental level specific. So if you have a kid who's already comprehending, already on grade or above, this is the kind of thing that you would definitely be doing if they do come to a guided reading group with you, or an individual session with you, a 1-on-1 or 2-on-2, okay? I can say you can use this for any grade level, although today we're going to talk about what it looks like with older grades. All right, let me share my screen here. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shove you into some groups and have you answer a question for me. And let me get the slideshow going here. Here's the question. This is a... I still see myself. Do you see my screen? Do you see why is this process? Do you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. So this is your question, and I'll stick it into the chat so you can remember, or you can just jot it down. Here's what I want you to do when I shove you into your groups, all right? I want you to answer, why is this process, the process down here, anticipation, building knowledge, so we're going to build background knowledge, so that it becomes prior knowledge. Let me say it again. When a kid doesn't know about a topic, okay, say farms or pretzels or whatever you're going to be, Amelia Earhart, whatever you're going to talk about. When a kid does not know about it, they have no prior knowledge. So then you're going to provide background knowledge. That background knowledge gets assimilated, and when it gets assimilated, it becomes prior knowledge. Does that make sense? So background knowledge and prior knowledge, oftentimes if you are talking to general teachers, they won't know the difference. But there is a difference. You build background knowledge so that the kid, as they assimilate it, right, very Piagetian, as they assimilate it, it becomes prior knowledge. So the next time you see them and you say, hey, tell me about the farm, they can then tell you some things about the farm. It's become prior knowledge for them. So everything that led the kid to your 3rd grade class is the things that are now prior knowledge. If they don't have any knowledge about it, then they don't know. I just had an experience a couple days ago where I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was like, oh, are you going to go to Libya this summer? With COVID, are you going to Libya? I was like, why would I go to Libya? And she was like, hey, you've worked there for like 9 years. I was like, oh, you mean Liberia. Libya is not the same thing as Liberia, right? So she didn't actually have the background knowledge to know what those two places were, because in the United States, we're not very good at teaching geography, if you don't know that. Like if you can't identify, say, Syria right now on a map, we're at war in Syria, and most of us couldn't identify where it is on a map. You know, it's over there, right? So same thing, Libya and Liberia. So that's just an example with adults. With kids, when they come in, they often don't have a lot of background knowledge, especially our kids who are in a low socioeconomic space. Because if a kid in a low socioeconomic space takes a vacation, let's say, or goes on spring break, they might go to the beach, but a lot of times they end up doing things like SeaWorld or Six Flags or that sort of an activity, as opposed to our high socioeconomic status kiddos will often do things like, I'm going to go hunt for coffee in Peru with my mom, and she owns a coffee bar, and that kind of thing. We're going to go get wine over in Sonoma Valley, and you'll hear these things, and it's like, what? Now, you will also have kids. I used to get a lot of kids, actually, who would leave and go to Mexico, and they'd be gone like 2 weeks. Like they take spring break and then another whole week. Sometimes they're even gone longer than that. But they don't understand that those things that they're learning there, even though they're in Spanish, can then be translated here. So they can use who they are and what they know here, because often they separate the two languages. All right. Oh, Star just reminded me, please over in the chat, put here so that I make sure that I count you as here. All right. Because I am starting to see who's got perfect attendance already. Cool. All right, so here's the process. Anticipation, we build it up. In this anticipation stage, we might do something like give some vocabulary and talk about it. We might do just some talk about it as we move into building knowledge, so getting them ready, getting them interested, and then we build the knowledge, and then we have them do the task. I guess I probably should have that in here. Or have them do the reading, and then they reflect. This last part is really important, meaning after they've done something, they come back, could be as a whole class, and we're going to do some, sporadic, turn to your partner and say what you learned, turn to your partner, describe something you read, turn to your partner, or write in your journal, 2 minutes, go, tell me what you learned. By doing that, it sort of instantiates in them the learning. If you write something down, you're much more likely to remember it. It's why you're doing Cornell notes. They make you crazy. I know you're sick of them. I absolutely get it. You almost don't want to open it up. You sit there and you go, oh my God, I don't want to do Wilson's homework. Like, I just don't. But the truth is, in doing it, you actually are increasing your knowledge. And when you come across these on your final exam and on your certification test, you're going to go, whoa, I actually know a lot. I'm actually really sort of instantiating this. I'm starting to get it. And so that's this reflection or consolidation. Some would call this accommodation and assimilation. All right. If you are an early childhood educator, you probably would call it assimilation, where you bring it to yourself. All right. So I'm going to throw you into some rooms. Let me go back in here. I'm going to throw you into some rooms and stop sharing. I'm going to throw you into some rooms. And when you get into the room, that's the question that I want you to ask. Why is my meeting? There we go. You're going to go in there. We're going to have, I don't know, how many of you guys are there? Let's see. Let's do like 5. Okay, so you're going to go in there. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to answer that question. Make sure you kind of write it down, all of you. And each of you needs to keep kind of a note page today. So something that you're going to be able to scan or take a picture of, like a JPEG with your phone, and be able to send it to me. Okay, that's going to kind of be your extra credit today, is your ability to just do what it is that we're doing. We have several online sort of breakout room activities today. So this is a way for me to see, hey, yeah, she was actually participating. She was here. She wasn't in there like hanging with the dog, or, well, you can hang with your dog. I'm going to allow that. I'm totally going to allow that. But you're not like, I don't know, dishwashing or something like that. All right, I'm throwing you into the rooms right now. Grab a piece of paper. You'll take a picture of it or scan it or something like that. Or you can just type it in a document and you'll be able to email it to me or to upload it. I'll put a little upload button so that I get a hold of it. All right, so when you go in, you're answering that question. Make sure you make some bullets, or you can do a little narrative. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, Mark. I think it's something to do with the tilt. Yeah, tilt of the earth. Mhm. 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 All right, you came back. You went through the portal of 9 3/4, 3/4, like Harry Potter did. All right, you guys hear me? Everything's good? All right. So I asked you to, whoops. I asked you to take a look at this particular question. Not that one, this one. This particular question. What's happening here? We got a whole situation starting here. Share. Had it all ready and everything. All right. There we go. So share. So this was the process that I told you for older learners. And what I'd like to see or hear from a couple of you that say why. Why would this be a process for older learners? And do you think it would work with younger learners as well?
So I think we talked about why the process is. And so I think for older kids, it's a lot harder to get them excited about something. And so to get them like anticipated and ready and like really like engage them in what they're about to learn helps them want to learn it. And
Totally.
then building knowledge, we put because not everybody starts off at the same level. And so if this gives them like an equitable opportunity for everybody to learn the same thing.
Great.
And so that's what we said about that one. And then the reflection, I said I think it makes them, because if they reflect on their own work, then they can be more proud and confident in what they're doing, and they learn from their mistakes, and they just don't know something's wrong, and they really understand like why it's wrong.
Perfect. Love it. Couldn't have said it better. Beautifully done. And I also love two things that you sort of mentioned. This idea of affect, right? So you have effect and affect. Affect being the internal feelings that you have, and then we want those to be intrinsic for kids, right? We wish that they just internally had this propulsion to do everything, but the truth is, the older that the kid gets, depending on the teachers that they have, the less likely they do what we're going to ask them to do. Which means that those of us that are teaching in these older grades have to provide that sort of anticipation. Part of that is you loving it too. Like when you feel excited about teaching the Alamo, they kind of come with you. They definitely come with you more, and they're more positive when they come into your class. We're going to look at a theorist, Csikszentmihalyi, in just a minute, who talks about a concept known as flow. And when he studied flow, he was looking at what allows runners to run 60 miles and be happy about it. Like, how do they sustain that? And then he looked at rock climbers and he said, how do rock climbers, why do they want to do that? And when they're doing it, what's happening for them that allows them to do things that most people wouldn't be able to do and to be happy while doing it? And what he found was, and I'll show you the chart in just a minute, but what he found was that when the level of skill is met with the level of challenge. So it's hard enough, but I also feel like I have the skill to do it. When those two things meet, all of a sudden, boop, we go into flow, which means time moves very quickly all of a sudden, and we're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 2 hours. I didn't mean to. This can happen for a lot of us when we are Googling on, we're online and we're looking for something, and you're like looking through and you're finding all these articles and blah, 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 and then you look and you were going to work on it for 15 minutes. You were just going to pull an article, and all of a sudden you spend an hour and a half. Right? It's the same reason I asked you to keep up with your time as you work on the high stakes position paper. Some of you are like, oh, I forgot I'm supposed to do that. So when you're working on your time, is all of a sudden you realize, I really am spending time researching and looking through for my own understanding. Like I really am. So keeping up with that, which is what Elena was saying down at this end part, is really important. Because once I've learned something, being able to reflect on it is showing that I know or what I don't know, right? And it allows a teacher to really, pay attention to what the kids are walking out. I love to use this one just as an exit ticket. I use note cards a lot, and I would say, hey, write down 3 things that you learned today. And they could write something like, I learned I hate history. But they also had to make sure that they told things that they actually learned. You can tell me a feeling, but you also need to tell me something that you learned. And this is great because often once they've written something down, they're like, oh, I did learn something today. All right. So as we start thinking about this process of setting up our lesson plan, this is very different than the kind of lesson plan that you probably have had to write a million times in the program. Madeline Hunter or the 5E model, right? Those are very long, in-depth lesson plans, and they might be great when you're turning them into us. The reason we have you do that is so you can think through the process, right? Truth, as a teacher, you're going to do something that looks more like this. So that when you are coming up with what the kids are going to do in science, this is a much better way to imagine multiple lesson plans that you're going to be making. Because you're just going to be making a lot. Like, that's how this works. You're just going to be making a lot of them. And there's no way for you to do 4-page Madeline Hunter lesson plans for all 7 subjects that you're going to be teaching. But telling how you're going to get the kids interested, what you're going to do to provide them with that background knowledge so that you build it, what the task actually is, page 94, right? And then how you're going to have them show that they've learned it. Sometimes it's a worksheet. Sometimes it's a journal entry. Sometimes it's a project that they begin. I'm much into project-based learning. So here with my reflection and consolidation here, there's usually some sort of project, i.e. high-stakes position project, all right? So it's like, here's all these little pieces. Now show me what you know. And for those of us that went through school where it was very clear what we were supposed to do and it's all based on tests, giving a project like that can be really overwhelming for kids and for you because you didn't do it very often. You don't often have somebody say, hey, do whatever you want, but prove that you learned something. It's like, well, how do I do that? And that's because the teacher always set up how to prove it. All right, so it's uncomfortable, but it actually gets better. So that's cool. So with our higher level older readers, right? So the reason I said older is primarily we see this in 3rd grade and above, but it can go all the way through high school. These are all things that can be done in high school. This is the kind of these are the kind of skills and knowledge that we expect kids to be able to do, and teachers should use these as ways to teach. These are their tools. There's no reason, I would argue, there's no reason that we can't imagine a lot of these being done in earlier grades. They're always considered for 3rd grade and above, but I would say a really good teacher, even as low as kindergarten, might be able to do some of these. So I'm going to throw you into a room again. All of these came out of Chapter 8, the older reading, I think it's Chapter 8, the older reading book. These were just strategies that were given. And I wanted to pull out some of them. There's a whole bunch of vocabulary that's in Chapter 8. These are the ones that I would say are probably the most important of the vocabulary in Chapter 8 because these are teaching tools. What I'm going to ask you to do is to go into your group. I'm going to pull this. These are basically what I want you to work on. In your groups, we are going to have, let's see, each one of these groups, there's 4 groups. Each one of these groups is going to do 2 of the pieces, okay? So if you end up in group 1, and I'll pop into each of the groups and tell you, hey, you're group 1, hey, you're group 2. You're going to do 2, except for group 4, which is going to do 3 of them, okay? So you're going to tell me, what is the teaching tool? What is this? What is an anticipation guide? What is it? You might need to do a little Google, right? You've got access. You're here. Even for poor Abigail who's sitting in her car, like she's got her phone, she's gonna do a little bit of little stuff. Hey, I love that. That's called tenacity. I'm game. Like I'm totally game. Okay, so what is the teaching tool? What is it? How should it be used? Who should use it? Okay, is it subject specific? Like this is something that really should be done in science, or it can be done in the content areas, but maybe not ELAR. You have to decide, or all of them. What grade levels could use this strategy? So if it's younger, what might it look like? And if it's older, what might it look like? And then why do we even care about them? Like, why would I pick these out and say, hey, these we know are research-based, explicit strategies for teaching comprehension embedded in books? All right, most of these. There's a couple words in here that actually are descriptors of kids, okay? So for example, learned helplessness are ones at the very bottom. Learned helplessness is a way that we describe what's happening for a child, okay? So they can be anything around child. So you'll say, if it's not a teaching tool, you say it's not a teaching tool. As a teacher, though, I would say, can it be? If I know a kid has learned helplessness, can it be? Okay, so you're welcome to sort of amend these questions as best as you can. I'm going to try to go into the chat room and give them to you. So let me see, hit breakout sessions here. And I'm going to shove you into breakout sessions again. Let's see how it goes. All right, you're going back in. I will come in and I will tell you group 1, group 2, group 3. So give me 30 seconds for me to get into all the different groups. One, okay? You're group 1. You're going to have about 10 minutes to do this, okay? So 10 minutes to work on it. And actually, while I'm in here with you, let me put these up here. These are the questions. We're kind of over there in your chat. I will see you guys in about 10 minutes.
So yours is like the only other one.
Hi, guys. You're group 2. You're group 2 in all your spaces. I will see you guys in about 10 minutes, okay?
Okay.
All right, see you then.
Just waiting for her to come in.
Hi, everybody. You're group 3. You're group 3, and I will see you in about 10 minutes.
Okay, group 3, and it's going to be 2 of them that we have to do?
Yeah, it's 2 of them. You're going to do the one that says group 3. Yeah. Oh, I should probably put those. I'll go put those in the chat as soon as I remember telling everybody. So I'll come back. I will put that up in the chat. Which words are yours? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
If you don't have them.
Okay, she's.
Hey, everybody. You're group 4. You're group 4.
All right, no, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Dr. Wilson.
All right, I'll see you in a little bit. About 10 minutes. Hello, everybody. So you guys are sort of my superfluous group. You're my extra. So you're going to do basically group 5. You're group 5. And what I would like for you to do is to pick 3 words that are in the whole list. And then you can do those. Any 3 that you think are interesting or you don't know what they are, like pick ones you're not sure. That's the best way to learn something, right? So if you know what something is, go to something you're not very clear about and check that out, okay? About 10 minutes and I will bring you back into the big room. I'm going to put the words over in the chat box in just a second, okay? Bye. Hey guys, how are y'all doing? You feel like you're good on the task or you need a little more time?
No, we just finished the last question.
Cool. All right. I'm going to give everybody about 30 more seconds and I'll call you back in.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Here comes everybody. We're back in the car. Called Car Talk by Abigail G. All right. So basically, I gave you guys about 10 minutes to sort of think through these ideas, teaching skills and ideas and tools. Now, sometimes these are tools that a teacher would use in her classroom for the kids. Sometimes these are like labels that a teacher can use to understand what's happening, especially affectively, like what's going on inside of their heart, inside of their bodies, as they're in our classroom. Remember that older kids often come in with a lot of preconceived knowledge of themselves, right? So felt like they weren't successful in first grade learning to read. Now they're in second grade, and they will tell you things like, I'm not a good reader. I can't read. That's not actually true. And if you're at that place, then we're going to move you forward. Like the end. Like we're going to become readers in my class. It doesn't matter if we're in third grade, eighth grade, or first grade. We're going to become readers. So somebody from group 1, tell everybody else, what is an anticipation guide? And is it subject specific? Why should we care about them? Pick something else to talk about concerning that first vocabulary.
Okay, we talked about it's a good comprehension strategy to get the kids engaged and also activate prior knowledge. And it's not subject specific. It can be used in any of the subjects, and it's not for a specific grade either. You can use it in any grade. And we doubt that it challenges students to think critically about what they know or what they think they know about a topic.
Awesome. And it can be any topic. An anticipation guide doesn't have to be a really complicated sheet that you print out for kids. You literally could begin with, hey guys, dogs. What do you know about dogs? Let's talk about dogs. And some kid is like, oh, well, I know I have this calendar on my desk and it's got a dog on it and it's a schnauzer. And another kid might say, well, dogs usually have 4 legs, but I have a 3-legged dog. And so he's different. And so as kids are sort of sharing, and remember, they don't have to share it with you. Quite often we call on kids and it's like one kid talks and everybody else listens. That works for a small amount of time. With our older kids, when one kid is talking, it's like all 20 other ones tune out what you're saying. Or what the kid is saying. So instead, we might have them turn to a partner, describe to a partner the coolest dog you've ever met. Describe to a partner why dogs are often guide dogs for blind people. And it can just be sort of setting this up. Who likes dogs, right? And so that's sort of the beginning of it, absolutely. And Why should we care about this? Skylar, do you want to finish up or somebody else in the group?
I put it's important because it helps us to engage into a new topic. That's what I put.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, we care about it because engagement is the number one rule, guys. I know that you have had those 5 pillars driven into your head over and over and over again, but the truth is, if you can't get kids to be excited about what they're learning, it doesn't matter that you know the 5 pillars because they're not going to want to do it. So if you can find a way to get kids engaged, usually through some form of knowledge that they already have, that can be a cultural piece as well. So how do dogs exist in your neighborhood? You know, I'm on the west side and I have dogs that wander around. My dogs wear shirts and those dogs wander free. So we might have conversations about that too, like how we go about understanding what animals are, whatever it is. Yeah, beautiful. All right, what about brainstorming or paired brainstorming? We know what it is. So how do we use it, or when do we use it, and why might it be important? Somebody else in group 1. Skylar's ready to go, but somebody else. Who else?
I put that it was important because it helps critical thinking skills, as in if they're doing paired, it helps them like collaborate with each other, also engage. I didn't put that it was grade specific or subject specific as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's not. I have seen amazing little pre-kindergarten kids tell you all that they know about dogs. And I can tell you, like, some of them you might be like, ooh, I don't know. Write them all down. The goal is that kids can come up with lots of different ideas. The more that they're brainstorming, the better, especially as they start learning about a subject. And you'll really realize some kid knows a ton about dinosaurs and another kid doesn't. And it's like those two kids, it has nothing to do with their reading ability. It actually has to do with the knowledge that they come into the task with, right? So when we provide that knowledge, we then have somewhere to sit to create comprehension. So when we have knowledge, it creates a place at the table for us to learn and comprehend. If we're reading something that we don't understand, even if it sounds like we can read it, it means that the comprehension breaks down. We don't really have a seat at the table because we don't know about it. So having me read a book about computer engineering, I can read it to you. I can read it out loud. I can record it. But it doesn't mean that I'm understanding it until somebody comes in and gives me the kind of background knowledge, or we brainstorm together and that the teacher realizes Jenny doesn't know anything about computer programming or computer engineering. And that allows the teacher to go, okay, this is something I need to learn about. If the kids already know the topic, it's probably not a topic you need to spend much time on, or you're going to utilize that to go deeper. The depth and complexity will get bigger. All right, how about group 2, concept maps?
So for concept maps, sorry, I have to read the question first. So we did concept map as the tool. How it should be used. You can use it basically to brainstorm the concept. You can give it to the students as one term, and they can basically put all their ideas on there if they know about it, or give them freedom to research about it. It's not subject specific or grade specific, because you can modify it to be for older learners where they can write like paragraphs or sentences.
Could they draw pictures?
Or draw pictures, like for the little ones where they draw, or they can cut out from magazines little clips that would fit into their concept.
You always wondered what to do with those random magazines that you have, and the LL Bean catalog that randomly comes to your house and you don't know why. Save them. Cutting out people that are looking excited or sledding or whatever else. The kids end up using them. So just so you know, it's not just books at the bookstore, half-price books, or at garage sales. Keep on to those ones that have actual people doing things, because they often show emotions and things like that you can talk about. Character traits like, look at this lady sledding. What's her emotion? Is it fear or is it excitement, right? So those are great. Yeah, so concept map is like that web, right? It's got some sort of circle usually in the middle with a vocabulary word, and then it's got all the little pieces out. Sometimes they could even be called semantic webs. Semantic just means the meaning. So you're using the web, to the middle of the web, to show meaning. All right, I'm going to show you the most common one that I've seen on your exit tests or your certification tests a lot. They like to use one specific one. So just in a minute, we're going to look at that. How about a dual entry diary, group 2?
So for that one, I found dual entry journal, which I'm sure was the same thing. So it has like you can download like a template for it, and so it has two columns. And in one column, they'll write something from the reading, so it can be for any subject, and they'll write down what they're reading. And so in the second column, they can respond to that and react to it. And so we said that it could be for any subject and for any grade. We even said for like kinder, you could copy and paste something from a reading that they read, and then they can draw a picture about how it makes them feel.
Beautiful.
And it is, oh, we should care because it builds comprehension and activates prior knowledge and vocabulary, and then they can share with each other too, so collaborative learning. And
Love it. Like working together, everybody can draw a picture of the turtle. Like we can have 5 turtles on the page, and that's cool. Like we can all draw, and they can be upside down. They can be on the back. Yeah. So dual entry diaries or journals. Another example of it is the Cornell notes that you're doing. So the difference is I gave you the questions. You didn't come up with them. But you are responding to them. Most of you using text from the book, but you also sometimes don't have the text and you don't even know where to find it. And so you're like, I got to Google this. And you start looking for it. And that's sort of the idea. Also, a dual entry journal or diary can sometimes have a response by the kid, and then the teacher goes in and writes, right? Like, oh, I really love what you wrote about the schnauzer. Schnauzers are interesting dogs. I've always wanted one, right? So we can actually have a conversation as well. Cool. 5-minute lessons, group 3.
So 5-minute lessons are pretty similar to quick or like mini lessons in the fashion that it's like super short. You're not covering an entire unit. And we said that it's not subject specific or grade level specific because you can implement it in almost any content area or like even like ESL and stuff. You can have little mini lessons like that to cover information. But that's what we found.
Yeah, absolutely. So every single day that you're in the class, we talk about mini lessons. It's so interesting in the college level because what I think that we teach in a lot of the general education classes are these long lesson plans, right? That are going to take the full 45 minutes, let's say. In general, that 45-minute time should have between 5 and 15 minutes of you doing the teaching. Everything else should be them doing the doing. So you can facilitate the doing, but you shouldn't be teaching for more than about 15 minutes max. And if you think about it, even now, some of us, we're here and, I sit in classes sometimes too. Well, every week I sit in classes. And I sit in these counseling classes and I'm in there for 3 hours and I think, oh my gosh. Like I'm a pretty learned person. I've got several degrees. I've done a pretty good job at school. I'm good at school and I'm good at test taking. So I'm like, okay. And after about an hour, I start going, oh my gosh, is this person still talking? Oh my gosh. And I'm old. So imagine when you're 10, so what we want is that the teacher comes in, teaches a concept really quickly, and then sees what the kids can do. Now, if the kids need more, you can come back and always do more. But you want to start with something small to keep the attention high. Because remember, I can't remember if it was Elena said at the beginning, one of the problems that we have with older kids, especially as they get into middle school and everything's going haywire, as you're a 4th grade to 5th grade teacher, you'll see this start happening. When they start going haywire and hormones start happening, it becomes really important that we pay attention to the motivation because they become not motivated. And an M&M doesn't do it anymore. So it's like, what is it that we do to build that intrinsic motivation? One of those things is quick lessons. So they're working on stuff. They need to do stuff, not you. We know you know about it. We need the kids to do it. All right, what about tiered vocabulary? Somebody, group 3. Excuse me. Group 3.
So tiered vocabulary. I think like the main ones or the main one that we use is tier 2.
Yep.
Which was the high utility academic vocabulary. But like with tier 3 is the more complicated vocabulary that kids would normally see in like science and things like that. And it is good to teach the kids that, like especially before the lesson. They definitely are capable. We just need to be open-minded to teach them. And then of course, like with more vocabulary, it helps them with their reading.
Beautiful. We're going to go a little bit more in depth in just a second. Yeah. So tiered vocabulary allows us as the teacher to know where our time should be spent and which words we should preview with the kids or pre-teach with the kids. It allows us to sort of set vocabulary for them. comprehension, guys, is dictated by vocabulary. So if they're missing a lot of words, like we said, they can't miss more than about 1 word in 10, remember? They have to be hitting at least 90% if their not comprehension breaks down, especially because if they are missing 1 word in that 10-word unit, that 1 word is often the hard one. It's the content word. So the very word that you need them to know is the word that they're missing, and they just skip it. As they get older, that's their primary strategy, skip it. You do not have many 4th graders, even if you tell them to sound it out. They don't do that anymore. They think that that's a baby thing to do. And so they often won't do it. So they just skip it. That's the strategy. If they're skipping a content vocabulary word that you need them to know, or an important word in the ELAR texts that are often fiction, if they skip those words, comprehension breaks down. So tiered vocabulary helps us to pick which ones are going to be the most important for us as a teacher, and then for the kids to know, and then ones that are very specific that we might pre-teach. Okay, how about group 4? We've got a couple on here that are just things about kids. So who wants to tell me about learned helplessness?
So learned helplessness, we put that it's the belief that behavior does not control outcomes or results. And so a way that a teacher can help students overcome this is that they can model for the student, what reading should look like, and whatever activity the student is, keeps failing at and just keeps thinking that they're not able to do it when they are able to do it. It's not subject specific because students can struggle in any other different subject, and they just feel incapable of being able to succeed. And it's not grade level specific either because kindergartners can feel this way as well as 5th graders and older students.
Beautiful.
And we should care about this because as teachers, we can be able to identify the issue and be able to help students before they reach that point to where they just don't want to do anything because they feel like they can't.
Yeah, well said. Learned helplessness is a problem in our schools, actually. As kids move up, they just continue to gather data about themselves and experiences about themselves that show that they're not good enough, that they can't do it. And so they develop an attitude like they can't do it. Now, some behavior, when you get that attitude of learned helplessness in myself, like I'm not a good reader, we can see behaviors that are awful, like kids start to throw tantrums and be upset, right? So we see bad behavior coming out of it because they don't want to do the task, which reinforces that they don't know what they're doing, right? We also see behavior where they're completely passive. They don't do anything, they just sit there quietly. They don't get in trouble, but they're also not noticed. And they develop this idea that I can't do something. When truthfully, hey, well, maybe you can't now, but the goal is that you're able to. So let's work on this, okay? And they learn it over time. And she's absolutely right. Jessica's absolutely right that kindergarten kids can have this. All right, you'll see kids come into your pre-K class that already feel like they can't do it. I've had kids that in pre-K class, they're drinking water out of a cup, right? And they're like, I don't drink out of a cup. I have to have my cup, my sippy cup. I have to one with the straw. I have to drink with a straw. I'm like, you can do this. No, I can't. I'll spill it. I can't do it. But you'll see it a lot with the older readers and older kids come in and they're like, I can't read. I'm not going to read. I'm not a good reader. I can't do it. So we got to make sure that we provide experiences where they're successful. They have to find success. All right, what about passive failure, which sort of goes along with this learned helplessness idea?
Yeah, so I closely tied them together. I put that it's not a teaching tool, but then I guess it kind of could be because, well, I don't know why, but I feel like it could be.
I think you're right. I'll tell you in just a second. Keep going.
Yeah, so I put that to overcome passive failure, you could do that through modeling, reading done by, the teacher, and it's a strong motivation for them to continue reading. I said it could happen in any grade subject or any grade and any subject, and it can be seen in older kids. I feel more likely to be seen.
Yep.
I think students can connect their failure to their own lack of ability, like you were saying about the sippy cup and stuff like that. So I feel like it could be done in any grade. And you said earlier that the preconceived knowledge of it's their own preconceived knowledge of their ability. And your example of, 1st grade reading and then thinking that they're bad at reading or they can't read. When they can read, they just need to try harder or more. So yeah.
Yeah, when you see a kid who is experiencing passive failure, quite often they're quiet. Like they sit, they're well behaved, but they just sit. They don't turn in stuff and they just sit. So you'll see this exactly like Shelby said. You'll see it as they get older a lot. With little kids, they're very seldom passive because they are active all the time. But they can have active failure too, where they push the journal away or they steal a pencil and run or they cause that sort of problem as well. How about the last one, study guide, providing study guides for kids, especially older ones?
So I did the study guide basically for what is it? I said that it's a form of aid to assist the student with learning. And then how should the study guide be used? Mostly you see it being used for a review, but it can also be used when the student is struggling and they need help in an area. So it's to help assist them with what they're struggling with. And as far as like the grade level, I haven't really seen like the younger kiddos use them. So I started off at third grade and higher, I think mostly because they are doing the testing more often. They're wanting to do or really observe what they're learning and things like that. So that's the grade that I did for that one. What should it look like? I think the study guide can have anything from previous assignments. Maybe they have an essay question. So you're going to want to have maybe different kind of essay questions that they're going to see on their test. Vocabulary is something to have on a study guide. So these are just some of the things that it'll look like. And then why do we care about it? I would say that it's to help the students connect with the test that they're going to be taking. So all the material that they learned prior to the test they're going to take, it helps them connect to, I guess, even feel confident in how will I do on this? Do I know the material? So it's just something for them to be confident and to help them.
Yeah, and some of the older kids, you might have them do the study guide, right? Fill it out. Some of them, you give it to them. I used to send a study guide home with kids so that parents could take a look at all the things we're going to be learning about elephants and things like that. They can then ask the kids questions, or the kid can use it to study. Could the kid use a study guide for those 20 minutes of reading time that we kind of want them to be having when they go into their bedroom? I don't see why not. I mean, I don't see why not. It would make a really good tool for them, and it increases their knowledge. So as soon as they come back after they've studied all about elephants, the truth is they come in and they're all excited to share it. And that's where we start to see the passive failure and the learned helplessness with the older kids change, is when they're successful. Okay, so basically one of the vocabulary words that one of the groups talked about, group 3 I think it was tiered vocabulary. You might have heard this before. I want to kind of go over it and then we'll sort of end today. I'll come back and hit this next week as well into some new stuff, but I want to make sure you leave with this idea of the 3 tiers of vocabulary. This is Beck. So if you kind of look here, this is what our book looks like, but Isabel Beck is really the one who came up with this idea that kids have particular vocabulary that is more frequent that they already know. And we should not be teaching what we already know. We should be teaching things that we think the kid need. They're just at that middle level, that instructional level. They need you. But we shouldn't be spending too much time on vocabulary that they're never going to see anywhere else. As they get older, we can increase that tier 3 vocabulary, but in general, we won't want them spending a ton of time in vocabulary that they're never going to see again. So let me show you what that looks like. So I kind of think of it like a 3-tiered cake. Some people will come up with other versions. They have triangles and all sorts of stuff. I like the cake because I like to talk to the kids about this, okay? That in my class, when you're with me, there's going to be vocabulary that you already know. I do not need to teach even kindergarten kids or pre-K kids what recess is. Like, I don't need to. They know what it is. Even if they can't read it and it's written on the board, if you show it to them and you say, oh, this word is recess, they're like, oh, I know what that means. Like, they already know. So I don't need to pre-teach vocabulary that I'm pretty sure that a kid already knows. So I want to spend my time instead in the high-frequency words, the words that are going to occur a lot more often inside of my area. So I want to teach things like summarizing. I want them to know what it is, how you do it, what it looks like. For the little kids, those high frequency words might be even some of their sight words. Might be words like draw. So they know what it is, but what does it look like? How do I do it? Are there different ways to do it? So that's for those tier 2. Your lessons when you're teaching should include mostly tier 2 vocabulary. Then you're going to throw in a few tier 3, which are words that have low frequency. Kids don't get to use them all over the place, but they might see them over and over as they take science. So let me give you an example. A good tier 2 word is going to be something like we said, summarizing. They're going to do that in science and history and English, language arts. They're going to hear that word over and over again. So it's a really quality word for the kid to know how to spell, what it means, how to chunk it, how do you use it, where do we use it? Because then they can see that subjects are connected. A tier 3 word, if I'm talking in science, might be a word like auger. Something that you are like, what is auger? And you probably heard the word, but you don't remember it. Or you've never heard that word in your whole life, and you're going, that's weird. I don't know that word. That's a tier 3 word. Auger is the gooey gel-like substance that you put inside of a petri dish. So it's that stuff that's in there when you rub your thumb on it to see bacteria or something. It's the gooey stuff that holds on to whatever is inside of that petri dish to grow. But if you're not in high school biology and it's been a while, you probably don't even remember what that was or if it was taught to you. That's because it has low frequency. Me knowing the word auger is not going to impact my ability in English language arts. But my ability to know what summarizing is. I'm going to see it over time. So we want to make sure that we're using primarily tier 2, that's your instructional vocabulary, and we're peppering it with a little bit, see the little candles up here, just a little bit of tier 3, so that right now this seems like a hard word to the kids, but maybe by the time they're in 5th grade it won't be so hard, right? They might have heard it again in biology. They won't hear it again anywhere else, but they might hear it in biology. Last thing I just want to give you, the best way to increase vocabulary with children, you can have all of these great things. When the one I was going to show you really fast because we just mentioned it is the Frere model. This is the one model that they keep using it over and over again on your certification tests, which is a part of a vocabulary model. So it looks kind of like the web or word concept map. Word in the middle, the teacher or the definition from the teacher or one that's from the dictionary, how you would write the definition. So you can copy it, but then we got to know what you understand the word to be. An example of the word and then a non-example of the word. So if the word is dog, the teacher description might be, I don't know, a fuzzy animal with 4 legs and a licky tongue and cute ears. And then my example is my schnauzer at home. Or the dog is fuzzy, cute, and wears a collar. And then the example is my dog at home, Zoe. And my non-example would be my cat, Peeps. All right, so we can use this. This Frere model is just asking them to come up with examples and non-examples. We're going to come back to this in just a minute, but are there any questions over the 3 tiers or some of these strategies that we use with our older readers that I would argue if you guys would start it in kinder or especially in 1st and 2nd grade, by the time they get to us in 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we're going to have these ideas be tier 2 vocabulary instead of tier 3, which they don't even know what it is. A lot of kids never have been told what these things are, even though they're experiencing them. I always think of this when I think of, because they are experiencing something they feel helpless in, but they don't have the word to describe it. I always think of this kind of like childbirth. If you've had children, you kind of know, what's going to happen, but you don't know what's going to happen. And when you get close to it, you're kind of fearful about it because you're like, oh my gosh, this is really going to come out of me. And you almost feel like, I can't do this. No way. I don't want to do it. It's it's going to happen. It's happening. So we think we know, but we're not so sure. And then we become sort of helpless about it. It's why we try to read about pregnancy and childbirth. We want to know. But then when it really happens, you're like, whoa, way different than I thought. All right. So I'll stay on for a little bit. We'll come back to this. This week is week 8. I will see you next week, but the week after that last week of March, start of April, we will not have face-to-face class. I'll be grading your projects, and if you'll probably be hearing from me through email during that time saying, hey, come and share this with me, or come, I'm confused on this, or something like that, so that we can work together if there are any issues going on with your projects. But don't worry about your projects, because if you put in the time, I'm going to be able to see it, I promise. So don't be afraid, just jump in. All right, so let me close this, stop sharing. You can see a giant picture of me, and I can see you guys. All right, I'm going to stop recording.